So Evelyn.
I'm glad you.
She ran out.
Yeah, right, so those.
Okay, she's in, what you call it, not coming today, Evelyn's not coming today. So Evelyn's going to us.
I have no.
Kathy.
I think my new judgment, it would have been, had I done it, but still.
Do we just bring anything we want?
Everybody.
Or the party?
Anything you want to share or can you say?
I would like to order shrimp or you bring some.
Can only.
Can I add to yours?
This is good.
Okay. Can I get the other three?
Yeah, but there's only 9 chairs.
And, chopper.
Michelle's coming, we should have 10.
Okay, I love that.
Just one more chair to move in.
That take 2 minutes.
Which means, hey Carl, would you want to sit here? Oh, and that we can then take that table down, that's all. If that's not, if you'd rather be over there, that's fine.
And you
Just trying
can
to
see
make
the
a little more
screen
room.
too.
Wherever you want to take, that's fine, you do.
I think that's your head. Yes, it is. I'm talking to you. Yeah,
that's your head.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, we're on camera.
Yeah.
What's your style?
was gonna say.
Everything in it is still like you just highlight. No, you're campaigning, it's like you've been, recording stuff.
You get my text?
I've never been campaigning.
I think this is the first one of the.
Can I impose on you?
What do you want?
When it comes to this, I'm going around and look.
Yeah, I've been over, yeah.
Somebody up there is gonna.
I hear you. Okay.
Yes, me too.
Nice exercise.
I get my phone.
Oh.
That's why.
Since you're here, I could.
Small.
Joe Tim, can you hear me? Wave your hand. Wave your hand so I can see it. Oh, Halima. Okay, thank you.
Lima looks like a pretty mountain set on there.
Look, you left the tricks.
Great, I don't know what.
Painful, but I did. Usually ask them to say something, so make sure that we hear them. Whatever. Maybe a message.
No.
Maybe a message from my man.
Oh, she can get to in the weather.
All right.
Actually, I am,
Good morning, everybody. Good morning, everybody. I guess we're gonna have an extra seat this morning. One member is absent, and then we'll have Michelle, when she comes around 10:30, sit over there or here, wherever she chooses.
Welcome to the first meeting of February, February 6th, 2024. My name is Dave Smith. I'm the chair. I'm the president of the council. I'd like to start out this morning a little bit differently than we have in the past. A few months ago, Tom did a presentation in the PAC for the anniversary of Woodland Pond, and in that presentation, he mentioned all the past presidents of the council and showed photographs. I just want to acknowledge that we lost one last week. So if we could have a short moment of silence in honor of Phil Kissinger, thank you very much. Thank you. So Mel, can you not hear me?
Yeah, okay.
Okay, thanks. On to the agenda. That was my opening remark. Do any members have any opening remarks? Okay, in the audience, participation for the first years. John, could you help us with the microphone, please? Now, John was going to help us, but Bill was one question.
I didn't see you.
Hopefully, two quick things. One is I was wondering.
Yeah.
No, maybe I'll take
Up,
it.
it's up. But there you go. Now it is.
I was wondering if there's been any discussion on the new company that's plowing the snow, because I've had to use my car. Every time it snowed, I needed my car. And I have found the plowing of the snow in the parking lots really inadequate. And then even coming home hours later, there was still ice and snow. It's like hard to find a good spot to park in. I just don't think it's as good as last year, and I was wondering if there's been any discussion on that. And the second thing is, I was wondering if there will be any further discussion on the possibility of a weekend nurse here, if that's something.
There should be. It's on, when I met with Michelle yesterday, we agreed that she would speak to that this morning if it came up, so it's up. Well, I have no answer for that other than,
Go to the facilities.
well,
That's
thank
what
you, John.
covered.
But yeah, if you have something, take it to the physical plant committee, but on the other hand, I've heard the opposite, so.
Yeah.
Maybe you're in a unique location, I don't know where you park or whatever, but certainly bring it up to those fellows, that group, I should say. And see what they can do.
On the resident portal of the Woodland Pond website, there's a section for documents, including resident council meeting. And the most recent date there is November 9th, and that wasn't even the minutes. That was a document of some sort, I think a listing of committees or some interest groups or something. But the most recent set of minutes on the website is May 2nd of 2024. No more.
Yeah, I know that toward the end of last year, or maybe it was even in January, that Ina and Lindsay were working on that. Ina was providing, Ina as last year's secretary was providing that to Lindsay, and I thought that was being done, but I will.
Yeah, the most recent minutes are actually May 2nd of 2024.
It is the goal of us and management to have that stuff available, so.
Because earlier ones are.
Something happened. Others? Was that all you had, Bill? You said nothing? Okay, John, thank you very much. On to the meeting, thank you. Start with approval of the minutes of the January 16th meeting. Can we get a motion that Mel will second? There we go. Your second. And Mel.
I have a correction, the minutes as written say the meeting took place on
I hear
January.
you. Bye.
I have a correction, the minutes as written say the meeting occurred on January 12th, it occurred on January 16th.
Page will roll. As secretary, you're authorized to make that change. Any others? Can we get a vote? Okay, thank you. Communications received and sent by the corresponding secretary.
Thank you. None were received in the copy, nor were any received in the council email account. However, we received through a rather circuitous path, a communication from Michelle. I won't bother to tell you what that path was, but this is the gist, or not the gist, the substance of what she said. There, she included a comment, lengthy comment, I believe by some member of the social services staff here, but no names are mentioned in this, so. And she says that it's important to share this because a good goal for this year of all the related committees will be how to figure out this, meaning what I'm about to read, as being the typical most transfer experience. Transfer that is from independent living to assisted living. And she indicates that this resident is more at peace in AL than she has been in independent for years. Okay, this is what the conversation was. While resident was sitting on couches outside of the great room, the writer sat with her to inquire how her transition to assisted living had been going. Resident thanked writer for asking this question and went on to explain that while she was hesitant at first, she has grown to feel at peace with her decision to move to the health center. Resident stated, "I figure, what's the alternative? Being isolated in my apartment or being here, IL, where there are always people around, always something going on and places to go." End quote. Resident further explained she did not socialize as much when she lived in independent living due to it feeling too big and open. Residents' feelings were validated and reminded her of where social services staff offices are located if she needs anything. Social services staff will continue to remain available. End.
Okay, thank you. Any reaction from the council members? And I sent this out to all y'all about a week ago. And that a couple of other committees have had a chance to see it and maybe chew on it. Any thoughts, any reaction? I mean, it sounds like a well-written, well thought out and a positive experience. I think the boss is looking for us to
There are more to tell us.
I don't know more, but there was also a couple responses from the social services staff at the health center. Sue Close says that I don't have it right in front of me, but that the neighbor corps has been helping to get those people, the residents over there more involved. And that the cross advertisement of activities here for residents there and vice versa has also been working. And I was just gonna impose on Jill for a second, has your committee seen this to take up?
It's,
Can you share with us what's going on?
Yeah, I did share that message with the committee, and we will address it at our next meeting, which is the end of this month, and see whether there's something else we can do to encourage that kind of thing. I think that is, I was very heartened by that message, and I hope that everybody over here, one way or another, finds out about it, because this is actually one of my goals as the chair of Health Center Committee this year, is to try to increase and improve communications and activities between here and the residents in the health center.
Wayne, can I ask you the same question? Because I know the note was forwarded to Sarah to work with your group. Have you had a chance to meet on this yet or not? This letter was sent. No, okay, so you're not,
Sarah wasn't at the last meeting, and our next meeting is open to the community, which is a week from tomorrow.
well, maybe this will be on your agenda,
But
but
I
it was,
haven't heard.
okay, the intent was to get it, Michelle's intent was to get this to us and to Jill's committee and to yours as well. I guess if I hadn't gotten there yet. Okay, thank you. Whole business. I'm still, does anybody have anything to add to the, this is not for the audience, this is for the council. Anybody have any thing more to add on the topics of any bylaw revisions? Tom and Larry have put forth certain things centering on term limits and relationship with committees and definition of committees. Does anybody else have other topics?
I do kind of wonder, and I don't see anything that specifically addresses this in the bylaws as now written, as to what constitutes a council committee and what other committees, what standards are for other committees, non-council committees.
I can get you a document on that. 2 years ago, that our predecessors on this council worked on some language for that in their policies and procedures. If you don't have that, I can get Thomas to you because he's got the original, but I can send it along. And it's my intent to use that document and any input we get on this subject to refine that a little bit and make it easier to use, whether we go to a more definition or a looser definition that we can work with. That'll be for us to decide and then for the community to vote on at some point. But yeah, there are some definitions out there which work-ish. No, the committees keep changing and
Sure.
so it's a moving target, but it's a good question.
Question?
No, not right now, no, thank you. Okay, so does anybody else have anything? So I think not at this meeting, I won't be here for the next meeting, it's my wife's birthday, we're going away. But at the first meeting in February, March, let's try to form a committee, set a schedule for going forward for getting our ideas in writing. And then formulating the calendar for getting the vote out to the residents to see what we're gonna have going forward. And as I said before, I'd like to get this done before Alice forms her nominating committee. So if there are some changes that people who are gonna run for council in the future have to contend with, they'll know just what the rules are, and the rules won't change underneath them. All right. I'm sending out a committees list. I hope everybody looked at it. I know everybody didn't print it because we don't print papers around here, but I did print a piece of paper. Does anybody have any suggested changes to that or find any mistakes? Yes, I have a couple of changes. They're not mistakes. I think there should be, because I'm the one who gave you the updates. The Mental Health and Wellness Committee, I think, acts similarly to sustainability. They have a task force. So on your chairperson, where we have Ronnie Sue Jaffe, I think an asterisk should be there, as it is with Dawn's name as the leader of the steering committee. And the only other change I have is under Rove, although Bridget's kind of a once a year consultant for that. She's not really a management representative, so that could be eliminated. Does anybody else have anything on that topic? Carl, am I coming for you? You should look like you're straining over there. No, you're not. I put my glasses on, you're doing fine. Okay, so what I'd like to do now, excuse me, there's something in my throat. What I'd like to do, thank you. What I'd like to do now is have Tom finalize that, and then I would give it to management and offered to them as an update and replacement to the appropriate page in the handbook. And that being approved, then make it available through advertisement in the Chanticleer, make it available for any resident that wants it to update his or her handbook. And I think we can put that to bed. Does anybody think that's a bad plan?
That's good.
Okay.
Do you want me to change the version date
Yeah,
from February 1st to?
to today. And I don't know, this version up in the top corner, 8/18/22, is that when we were working on the revision of the bylaw of the,
That's the version of policy and procedures. That's in the.
that's the following page? I just want to update
There's
this
several
page.
pages.
I just want to update this page.
Yeah, the version 8/18/22 is just for the policy that's in.
That's the document reference to that, right?
I can send that to
We'll just send it to everybody.
Okay.
Please.
To clarify, this is being updated, this page that goes.
Yes.
That's what we want to do. And for those who are listening, it's just a current list of the committees by category, council committees, ad hoc, and resident committees, which Larry referenced. We need to sort that out, and it references the chairperson, the management representative, and the council liaison. It does not give membership, contact information, or meeting schedule, but that's all changes so frequently you can't keep up with it. Okay, thank you, Tom. Carl, I'm gonna hand you the microphone, and we'll just go around the room with the committee reports. That's the second.
Okay, I wasn't able to be at the health committee, so Kathy took these notes for me as far as I can make them out. Deborah Vining is the new director of nursing. Jill wants to increase contact between health center residents and those in independent living. I guess there's a whole range of different types of contacts. New mental health providers and program are encouraging people in independent living to do things in the health center. Cameras have been put up in the garden, in Garden View, to prevent elopement. I'm not sure why they thought that was necessary. It's a locked garden anyway, but it's done. Deborah Vining has looked at staffing levels. Our levels meet all requirements, but she's still hiring staff in all positions. Margaret Niehaus says that they are still welcoming committee volunteers. And somebody expressed concern that some residents are receiving meals they didn't order. Phil and Jared have talked about this. And finally, it was reported that falls are decreasing. That's the report as it was given to me. Okay, from
Carl, you have a question over here?
One comment, one time I did find that gate from the garden view, the garden open.
it was open?
Yes,
Okay.
it happens.
I'm not sure that a camera would stop that, but all right. Yes,
You'll be submitting the minutes that I can attach to, sorry.
hardly. I'll give you this and see what you can do with it.
Okay.
In the health committee, not physical plan committee, there was discussion about the planting beds, a lot of discussion. And finally, Tom wanted to simplify it to just a statement that Woodland Pond will take care of all planting beds unless requested by residents to do otherwise. But there was a big question about whether or not vegetables are allowed in the plants outside of people's ground floor apartments. And Tom expressed the view, yes. And nobody seems to remember that somewhere in the handbook, there is a statement that says no vegetables are allowed in these beds. Does anybody know about that statement?
In the old one.
It's the old one?
In the old one.
Apparently, it's no longer in force.
Existing and enforcing are two different things.
Okay, so Tom does not object to vegetables as long as they are attractively maintained. The walk-in coolers are, the job is finished and the big trailer is gone. The pool pack on the roof is being delayed because of scheduling problems, but the pool is open, at least as of our last meeting. Fred asked that the public be informed by Chanticleer of the rule that if you want to have something done in your apartment, you need to make sure the contractors have proper insurance. So they're gonna get that out to the public. Now, this is, talks to what you read, Elizabeth, about snow problems. The Tom is going to now institute regular bi-weekly hours where he will be sitting here and
In the game room.
in the game room.
The game room.
Okay, and be accessible to those who want to talk to him about any issues that come up. Tom has expressed the view that they're doing a good job in snow removal. So if you feel differently, this would be your way to get to him on his regularly scheduled hours, starting February 12th, to be held every other week.
10 till 10:30.
Now, some of you were woken up at 2:30 by the leaf blowers that were getting rid of the snow. Tom says that will be stopped. There will be no more future use of leaf blowers to get rid of snow.
Not at night.
Not at night, right, sorry. Gutters will be cleared in spring. If you see ice anywhere, call for an immediate work order. And the resurfacing of the pool floor is gonna be put off till it becomes part of the renovation. Which bothered me a little bit because we keep hearing two things about the renovation, that it is coming soon or it's not coming soon. I hope we'll discuss that when Michelle is here, and that's it.
Comments, questions for Carl and next meeting? Okay. Yes, Mike, please. Thank you.
Okay, I have no information at the present time concerning arts and decor because the meeting is today, later in the day. And landscape's first meeting is not until March. So there's no information on those two items. However, I would like to talk about a item that came up that is going to be of interest, and you can categorize it as a cautionary tale. Let me tell you what happened.
Now, does this have to do with one of your committees?
Bonnie,
Does this have to do with one of your committees?
No.
Could we bring it up later then?
you what?
Could we bring it up later then?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay.
Don't let me forget. Don't let me forget.
I don't hear you.
Don't let me forget to come back to that.
Okay.
later.
Right.
I have no reports.
Okay, land conservation, I was otherwise occupied for the Land Conservation Committee meeting, and so if our honorable president wants to talk about it, he can. In the meantime, I can say that the bi-monthly talk sponsored by the Land Conservation Committee went off with a extremely large crowd. And it was apparently a big success. This was a presentation by Fran Dunwell, a local resident and author who has written a couple of books about the history of the Hudson River. and both natural and historical. And it was an excellent presentation. So we hope to continue our string of such talks starting next month. As liaison to the board, I gave a report at the opening of their last meeting via Zoom. And I have a printout of the comments that I made to them, which I will duly pass along to the secretary. But I don't see any reason for me to read what I said. Nothing in it. It was secret. It was all just comments that I thought were worthy of their attention.
Okay, so to backtrack onto what Larry said about land conservation, was a short meeting and it stuck to the business of future speakers. We reviewed the list you had and missed you, but we missed you so much that we adjourned early. But there was nothing, nothing new. Nothing new. But I would like to go back to what happened at the board meeting. I was also present to kind of do a handoff, introduce Larry and introduce him to the new board or to the current board. And some things happened in there that were to me amazing because for 4 years I've been coming to this meeting here and watching by Zoom and being a member, and there was very little reaction from the board to anything we were doing. But at this particular meeting, they're very enthusiastic. They have agreed, it's later on the agenda, I'll mention it. Their board chair, the current board chair, Chris Druin, has agreed to be a Council Connections subject. Interview E later this month and be interviewed by Dick Barry. That just kind of came out of almost nowhere. And so I thank him for that. But also at that meeting, in the 5 minutes or 10 minutes that Larry and I were there, Michelle spoke to the board and asked them, and they didn't say they wouldn't, that they might consider becoming further involved with resident activities by attending our monthly, bi-monthly meetings by Zoom, and I don't know if any of them are on today. And also appearing at the management Q&A from time to time. So those are two big, to me, those are two big steps, because in the past, you didn't see these folks, or not that they weren't, their effort wasn't felt, but you didn't see their faces. Now it seems to be a little turning of the corner where they've got these three things coming up. And I'm pretty enthused about this, and hope you all are too. I hope you come to today's council connection, but also for those of you who are interested in what the board does and what the face of the board is 2 weeks from today. And so thank you for arranging that, Councilor. And that's that for the board. June. Oh, Rove didn't meet. I'll do my own now. Rove didn't meet.
The dining committee met on Tuesday, February the 4th. Respect was paid about the death of longtime member Anne Hanover. And in the future, Ina Pottorff will coordinate the Jewish holiday meals with the dining staff. The new freezers are up and running and appear to be in good shape, and the truck has gone. Executive chef Lindsay Atchison, CIA graduate, supposedly started yesterday, so I don't know if that actually happened. 15-minute reservation slots will begin March the 3rd, and Phil hopes this will prevent backups, particularly of the 6:15 seating. The Valentine's Day dinner is completely booked at 170 people. The menus will be sent out each day now via constant contact, except I guess instead of from the concierge. And the hope is that they will go out at about the same time each day. And the Seder is scheduled for April the 12th from 5 to 9 in the PAC. And more information will come out about making reservations for that later. That's it on dining. Any questions on dining?
I believe this is when Mel wants to talk.
This material pertains to, specifically to dining, so let me, relate what has happened to me, okay? I attended brunch, which, I guess it was about 2 weeks ago, and it was an excellent brunch as it usually is. When I got my bill, I noticed that I had been charged tax on the bill, which was kind of strange to me because I didn't have anything to eat that required a tax. I checked with the other table members, they also were charged tax. So I called over the server, point that out to her as what I assumed to be an error. And she left, and about 5 minutes later, Tanya, the server supervisor, came over and said it was a mistake. I say, well, okay, and she says, what I'm doing about it is I'm sending an email to the finance manager, Christie, and it will all be corrected because it was a computer glitch. Fine, okay, we're talking about, $3 or so, not a whole lot of money. I did not do anything about it. I'm reporting it now because the other day I got my monthly bill, and sure enough, there was a line item tax, $3.20. So something got lost in the communication. I don't see why I should have been the only one at brunch that had happened to. What I notice is people basically just scan their bills and just don't really examine them. I examine them. In the day, I used to read matchbook covers, but that's besides the point. So my concern is, how prevalent is this? Has it gone unnoticed over years? Mistakes, of course, can be made, but they have to be picked up by the residents if it is such. So I am just passing this along as a cautionary tale, to June and to everybody here today. Thank you.
Just to wrap, any more questions? Any more questions for June on her dining?
Okay, sustainability, they met,
Just dining. We'll pick this up after Michelle leaves.
oh, I didn't see that.
Yes.
Over there.
Yeah.
I'm only asked because I hate having my back to people. I think it's very rude.
Whatever's best for
Sorry.
you.
So if there's a seat can allow, but I just can't.
The next time we'll make a seat there.
No, it's fine. It doesn't, I wish there was a way that we could always make it like, so it's angled. I'll talk to Jason about it, so you don't have your back to anybody either.
It's been a work in progress. The whole seating arrangement, this is version 23.
20,000, right.
Okay, so Michelle and I and Tom for part of the meeting yesterday had a nice sit down and went over any number of topics. And surprise, the topic of wellness nurse came up during ears, and people would like to know where we are. I should tell the audience that the council did submit its motion to provide Michelle with his motion. And she responded to it and gave us some ideas on her part. And then we asked for some more information back, most of which has been received. We're not totally up to date. So the council has not yet had a chance among itself to discuss your responses.
Okay, before I get into that, I want to just talk to your point, Mel. So one of the things I would ask of the council and of the residents is if you have an issue like that, these people in this room can't help you, but I can. And I didn't know anything about that happening. It didn't get escalated. So I would just ask that before something comes to the council or to the group as a whole, that it get escalated through me first so I can try to troubleshoot it. Because it may have just been a completely isolated incident, but it also sounds like it should have gotten rectified. So to me, that's an operational issue that I can help resolve, whereas your neighbors, they don't work in the business office. So it's good to have a cautionary tale because I do think everyone should be reviewing their receipts, to your point. That's very important, and your bills. But if you have an issue like that, just if you would, as a courtesy, just allow me the opportunity to try to respond. All I do in my office all day is troubleshoot stuff, so it's not a problem. I want you to feel like your issue is being resolved, okay?
The email did go to Christie.
Okay, so, all right, so I will follow up with her, that's good for me to know, okay? All right, so in terms of the wellness nurse, I understand that there was a discussion as a result of somebody that raised something from the audience a few weeks ago, and the residents council asked strongly that we put the weekend wellness nurse back in place. So when I said that that was not gonna happen, at least based on where we were at that point, I explained why. And the reason was that the wellness nurse really does not do, I think, what a lot of people think that the wellness nurses do. In that the vast majority, and I mean vast majority of the time, is spent helping you with non-emergency things. So I need a new doctor. I got a new medication, I don't understand it. I wanna talk with you. And one of the things that some of you know about Mary Jo is, more so than anything, I don't wanna say she's a shoulder to cry on, but she's an empathetic ear for a lot of you. And a lot of you find the most value with MJ in terms of her empathetic ear. So if something's changed in your life, something's on your mind, she's always made herself available to have those discussions with you, and she's wonderful at that. But that's not what the request was from the council, and really what the request, as I understood it, was, well, what happens if there's an emergency on the weekend? You know, we had Angel, now we don't have Angel, what happens? So what I was not sure that the residents council knew, was that the number of calls on an emergency basis that any of our wellness RNs respond to is de minimis, meaning they're almost non-existent. So in order to validate that, I offered to provide 2 weeks worth of PERS button alarm data to the residents council, and as well, any non-PERS button but emergency issues in independent living. So these would be emergency issues that came up from a PERS, a call bell, anybody that observed something, or a phone call. So basically through all sources, 24/7. So I last provided the data to you 3 days ago or so. So I have 2 more, today's the last day, I think. So I provided 10 days of the 14 that I promised. And in those 10 days, all of the PERS alarms that were pulled, which was maybe 20, were false alarms, except 2. And the 2 that occurred, the wellness RNs did not respond to. One was a security guard response because it was overnight, and one was Lindsay responded to it because she was here and she couldn't get in touch with MJ. And in both cases, all our staff needed to do was call EMS. And I think that it's very important for you to understand that that is the typical experience. When MJ goes, she really is only able to provide basic first aid anyway. And the number of times that she's been needed in an emergency basis in the last 2 weeks, we had 1 incident yesterday that she responded to. We had an incident, an emergency incident, 2 of them actually on the day before yesterday. Mary Jo did not respond to them because she was gone. Jason and I responded to the one out front 2 days ago. And several of us, myself included, responded to the dining incident. And I think it's really important for you guys to really understand that, generally speaking, what's happening if there's an emergency is any of us on staff are evaluating the situation quickly and saying EMS needs to come in. It's not sitting on the hands of the wellness RN to save a life or to respond. Regardless of that, the 95% or more of the PERS buttons historically are false alarms. You guys bump into them, something gets knocked, it's very common. And the way that that gets resolved and the data that I provided to the residents council is that concierge calls, they say, oh, it was a false alarm, or security calls, it's overnight, it was a false alarm. That's the vast majority of things. We did not have a wellness RN prior to COVID on the weekends. The reason that she was added on the weekends during COVID was because folks were getting tested all the time. People were concerned about their symptoms. There was a heightened level of concern and so forth. We never increased monthly service fees to accommodate for that. We took some other line items out of the budget, but if we are to put it back, it's over a 6-figure addition that needs to be dealt with. So I just don't think it's a good use of Woodland Pond resources, given how little they actually respond to emergency information, and I'm open to discussing this with the council.
Responses from the table?
Going back 2 years, almost to the day, I was in the first couple of weeks of post-stroke in skilled nursing. My wife and brother were visiting me on a Sunday afternoon when my wife suddenly, obviously, lost touch with reality, not in a demonstrative way, actually totally opposite of a demonstrative way. I called whoever the nurse was on duty in the health center. They couldn't do anything because my wife was a IL resident. So they duly called Angel, who came, and all Angel did was call EMS. That was it, which I could have done myself if it had occurred to me. 2 weeks into my stroke, I wasn't thinking all that clearly.
And I can address that. The reason for that is because they really are, the wellness RMs in independent living, although they are a registered nurse, in New York State, they can't do a full scope of registered nursing services because they don't have a doctor to report to. And in New York State, all RNs have to have a reporting MD. We don't have an MD for them to report to in independent living. So they're able to do basic first aid, and, do advice and things like that, but there's very little, that they can do. And a stroke protocol says get them to the hospital as quickly as possible, because they have clot busters. The faster you get to the hospital, if you think you're having a stroke, the clot busters work. So the first thing we're gonna do basically in any case is call EMS. And all of our staff is very well versed in not being shy to call EMS. And this resident population is extraordinarily benefited by the fact that the rescue squad is right across the street. I've talked with my colleagues, most CCRCs are waiting at least 15 to 20 minutes to get EMS here. Ours is usually 5 to 7. So thank you for sharing that. The other thing I will just add, and I forgot this, I have been asked by the Residents Council to provide the job descriptions of every nurse in our employ. And that was administrative nurses, charge nurses on the day shift in skilled, charge nurses in the evening, the unit managers, wellness RN, and there was 54 or 59 pages of job descriptions that these guys browsed through. 59. We handed it all over, and I share that with you because we're not trying to hide anything here. It's very transparent. I don't know what the outcome was. I know Kathy Kelly was particularly interested, and with her medical background, she probably has the best eye for these kinds of things. Unfortunately, she's not here today. She has not asked me any follow-up questions, and I had a meeting with her on a separate topic in the interim. So she may be okay with what she saw.
That's what she told me.
She did tell you.
I think Carl had it.
I had a similar experience to what Larry had of Angel coming and discovering that Anne was in terrible shape and sending her to the hospital, whereas I just hadn't made that realization that it was necessary. And somehow well, anyway, you have done so many things beyond the contract to improve life here gradually. And one of the things you did was giving us a weekend person. And if for nothing else, true, you made it clear that any one of you can call in the emergency services we need. But in terms of simple peace of mind, those of us who are hypochondriacs feel much better if somebody is here on the weekend. And if you can figure out some way again of having that weekend nurse not be a full-time person or whatever, any way of bringing it about, it would make us feel much better. If you can't do it yet, you won't do it.
I understand what you're saying. I don't know how many people feel that way. But there was a time when I first became the executive director, a lot of you are not gonna remember this, but there was a petition sent around that I should move on campus with my family. Because people would feel better about that. It's just, we have to recognize at some point that this is independent living and we do have staff here 24/7 for you. And a lot of us have a lot more know-how in this area than you may realize. So I'll give you an example. When we had the first incident on Tuesday, maybe it was Monday. We had an unconscious, unresponsive staff member in the dining room, and both the RN from Skilled that came over as a good Samaritan, she didn't come over her scope of practice, she ran over as a good Samaritan. And Mary Jo both attempted a sternal rub on this staff member, they could not get her awake. I did it and I got her awake. So there are some of us that just here, and a lot of us have been here a long time, we know what the basic things are, but the number one thing is call EMS. Make sure the person's stable, check their wrist to make sure they've got a pulse. When the staff member went down on the other day, the AED was brought over. They were prepared to deploy it. She was a young woman and, but she had a pulse. So when there's a pulse, the AED won't activate. So I think we just need to continue to evaluate it. I'll ask the residents council to figure out what you want to do on closing this out. Maybe you want to wait till Kathy's back, but at this point, what I owe you now is the last 3 days worth of data. And then I'll leave it in your hands. We've got are you taking questions from the audience?
Yeah, but I wanted to say that Michelle's only got another 15
No,
minutes.
I can say another 20 if I need to.
Well, okay, but there's a couple other significant topics that we're gonna bring up.
One of the things, when I talk to people, as I've been asked to, and I gladly do, people from New York City who are thinking of moving here, one of the things that when I list the long list of good things about this place, one of the things that people respond very strongly to is when I used to say, and there's a nurse on duty during the daytime hours, 7 days a week, that people respond to that because that is striking. About Angel, I had very little personal contact with her, but I certainly saw her a lot on weekends as I came wherever. Certainly between buildings, because I deliver mail in the other building on Saturday, and I saw that she was often there. After a while, it was clear that she was the supervising nurse there, as well as what she was doing here. I saw lots of people in her office with her. Maybe they were just bullshitting, but it seemed to me that it was IL residents talking to Angel the nurse. And I would see her running off many times. I don't know, maybe she was just responding to people who had mistakenly pressed their purse button. But she was involved. She was out of her office much more clearly than Mary Jo, and that's not a thing against Mary Jo. She was out and about and responding to people, and I can't imagine that doesn't have something to do with the satisfaction level, security level of the people who live here, and there's very little staff to be seen on weekends. No criticism of the quality of the staff here, but there's a lot of people just sort of wandering around and nothing much to do, even though I think there's a lot to do. I think that presence is palpable, makes a difference in the atmosphere here. And I've never heard anybody say, I wish there wasn't a nurse here. Who needs them? They're just wasting money or anything comparable to that.
Well, maybe they should have asked me, because to your point, there is a lot of bullshitting that goes on. And that's kind of what I look at and say, you know, I understand that there's absolutely a value in that for the residents, is somebody to be able to talk to. And I don't want to put it in the context of bullshit, because obviously if you're going to speak to someone, it's because you feel the desire to connect with someone and the desire to do that. My inclination, if we were going to spend $100,000 plus to have somebody here on the weekends, would be that it would not be a nurse, because the nurse duties themselves are extremely minimal. But rather to have management, like somebody from management here on the weekends, if you're feeling that there's a lack of presence, because there's a lot more that a manager could be doing than a nurse. So that's something I think we can think about, but for the 2026 budget, because none of this is budgeted for 2025. We did not anticipate the issue coming back up again. We eliminated the salary cost from the budget for 25, because again, this was a COVID construct, never existed before 2020. And so for almost 12 years, we never had a need for somebody here on the weekends. I understand people got adjusted to it, but my team will unanimously tell you that if there's a need for something on the weekends, it's a manager, not a nurse.
Yeah, and then please, can we move on to another topic?
Just to confirm, if there was an emergency or they needed a nurse or somebody to respond from the health center, that's not allowed. I mean, people in the health center are not allowed to respond.
So under licensure, they cannot come over. They can come over as a good Samaritan. That's it. All right, next topic.
Next topic. We'll get the other vote right back in a moment. Michelle, there was a top secret hush hush meeting in here on Tuesday. You might have attended, and you might want to inform those in our audience in the cyber world and present what was said and where we are.
So it wasn't really a top secret or hush hush because the windows were open and all of you talked about it after you left the meeting, which was fine because I told you all I had no expectation of confidentiality. But many of you are aware, we've talked about this in a number of different forums at this point, that we are actively investigating alternative sources of funding to be able to accelerate certain projects from 2028 to 2025 in the renovation. We started mentioning it at the finance meeting that we had related to the project in December. We talked about it at Finance Review Committee. The boards talked about it, and there are a number of ways that can happen. A couple of them have been eliminated. And so right now, what we are considering, and this is extremely important because I've already heard the grapevine got this wrong. We have not decided that we are doing a capital campaign. Can somebody take that down and make that official, please? This is not decided. This is all under consideration. We are being very careful with this. So we first bounced it off of the Finance Review Committee, gave them time to ask questions and provide us feedback. We provided that information to the board. The board voted unanimously to allow us to proceed with this, including Dick and Ray. And I thought the next natural step before we decide to go forward with it, which we have not done, and please hear me say, we have not decided on this, because I have heard from a number of people that it's a fait accompli, and that is not the case. So I asked everybody that was here when we met on Tuesday to please, if you're going to go talk about this in public, please get the narrative right. And the most important thing for everyone to know is we are still doing due diligence on this. The next step in the due diligence was to get the Residents Council together with the Finance Review Committee, and as well Sally Cross, who is our board member that is a career fundraiser through community foundations and other organizations, and as well Maddie Lee, who spent her career doing this and has acted as a consultant for us on this. What we did was we aired the actual board discussion. It was videoed. We aired it for everyone that was here. They were able to hear exactly what the board said and discussed. They were able to see how the board voted. And then we opened it up for, I don't know, half an hour, 45 minutes of discussion. There were questions that were asked. And at the end of that, what I said was, I don't expect this to be confidential, but what I'm asking of you, again, is to get the story right when you bring it to your neighbors. And if you have questions before you say anything to your neighbors, please come to me to get it straight. I sent an email yesterday. Oh, and I also asked the members that were there to take 10 to 14 days.
10 days, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, or 7 to 10, whatever, like around 10 days. I was gonna give the members that were here to think about this and ask me questions and bring me feedback. And I continue to ask that of you and of the Finance Review Committee, because it's these questions that help us formulate what would work, what's not gonna work, where do we think the residents are with this. So again, similar to the situation where Mel is bringing the concern about the receipts to the residents, the neighbors at your dinner table can't answer the logistical questions that you have. So if you have logistical questions about how this would work, or you need clarity on things, I need you to come to me, because I can answer that and then go to your neighbors. And in the meantime, I'm just asking everyone to continue to give me feedback so that we can continue to consider this carefully. I sent yesterday a couple of the questions I've received so far. Hopefully you're all reading those emails. One of the things that I really feel is important, and I was actually thinking about this again in the shower this morning. This is the biggest undertaking Woodland Pond has done since we've opened. This renovation and expansion, by far. It's bigger than anything that we've done. It's bigger than a lot of the things that have seemed big here. It's actually bigger than COVID. It's bigger than everything because it's got a huge financial impact. It has a huge potential disruption impact to the residents. It's a huge thing. And I think that it's very important that the board members or the residents council members are completely up to date on what's going on. And you and I really didn't talk about this, and I apologize because I really was thinking about it more this morning. There has never been anything bigger at Woodland Pond that's happened since any of us have been here than what's about to come. And there are so many avenues for the residents council members to be completely on top of what's happening so that you have the accurate information. You have to be good purveyors of that. It's critical that as representatives of the residents, elected representatives, that you completely understand what's going on and don't purvey bad information, not intentionally, but just, maybe misunderstanding. So if I could do anything, capital campaign or not, as we go through this, I think the residents council members need to familiarize themselves fully with the financial models by coming to the financial review committee meetings, and listening to Dave's addresses, asking us questions. We have open doors because residents are going to look to you like you're an authority on this because it's such a big thing. It's going to take work, but to me, I think I can't mandate it. Nobody's in charge of the residents council, but I would ask that of you out of respect because this is the biggest thing we've undertaken and you are the resident representatives.
I think I'd add to that the Q&As are very useful for this too. That's a firsthand chance for back and forth. But yeah, none of us at this table are at the top of the pyramid. Michelle is and Dave. We've got to get good information from them and accurately repeat it. If you think about what the old telephone game is, by the time it got from Carl to Tom, it would be a different story. And it would, intentionally, that's just the way life works. So, yeah, be accurate. Any response on that? And by the way, thank you all council members who attended that meeting. It was nice to see you all there.
Okay, I guess you wanted us to come in privately, but I'll take advantage of this. You're being here right now. I've discussed this with many people. And I was surprised at how negative the general response was. But one of the questions which you answered, but I wasn't satisfied with the answer completely, was why cannot residents not buy special bonds for this special purpose rather than giving contributing money? Why can't we do something in terms of a loan, like a bond?
So we do not have the debt capacity in the 2025 financing to borrow any more bonds in 2025. I tried to explain this, and again, this is where there's a lot of detail to this, and those that are here from the Finance Review Committee will tell you it's an hour-long discussion, and that's why we have those meetings, is to go delve into this in detail. But Woodland Pond and any organization only has a set amount of debt capacity, and ours is dictated by our bond covenants and by statutory reserves of New York State. So we know that we can only borrow based on our debt capacity in 2025, $23 million. That's it. So we do not have, under the regulations and under our bond documents, we don't have the ability to borrow anymore. And I think it's, I think one of the reasons that some residents have been negative on this is because there's misinformation that came out of the meeting on Tuesday that somehow we can't afford those projects, and that's why we're asking for the money. And that is diabolically incorrect. These projects are budgeted for 100% in the model, and it's that they are affordable in 2028. So the entire purpose of the capital campaign, if we go forward with it, is simply to accelerate what can't be accelerated otherwise. So it's contemplated, it's budgeted for, it is in the models for the 2028 financing. It is affordable and it's already contemplated. Everyone in this room needs to hear me saying that, because the number one thing I've heard coming out of Tuesday's meeting is Woodland Pond said they could afford it, now they're potentially gonna put their hands out. Completely the opposite. This is already contemplated in the 2028 financing. It's in the modeling. We are simply raising the opportunity for residents and potentially family members, if they choose to do this, to accelerate the projects that you seem most excited about, and the ones that the residents time after time are saying, this is awesome, but I'm gonna be dead. So it's just an acceleration. It is not we are looking for this to afford these projects. I hope everyone is hearing that clearly from me, because that is the number one myth that came out of Tuesday's discussion from what I'm hearing. Somehow that got twisted going out of this room.
Response from the table, Sean.
I have been mulling over this whole idea of the expansion for some time. I have seen all the plans, and I have also heard Michelle, concerning the financial aspects. I don't have a problem with the financial aspects. Michelle has done her homework, and basically you can put it to rest by saying that it's doable. Financially, it's not a problem. Michelle alluded though to another problem where she commented on the fact that, hey, I'm gonna be dead. That's a problem. It's not a laughing matter, it's a serious problem, and it isn't the money. The problem that I perceive is this: I'm 90 years old. This is a project that may run 5 years until completion, at which point I may or may not be 95. My problem is do I want to buy into the disruption? This is what's bothering me. And I know what disruption means for this project. It's gonna be brutal. There's gonna be all sorts of noise at hours you really don't want it, dust, this and that. And that is my basic problem. The fact that this is a project that should fly by on another type of community, but you have a special community of residents who are aged. And like you said, who needs it? I'm gonna be gone.
Right.
This is the big problem, okay? So I thought I would put that out right now, and in talking to people, they agree with me. It isn't the money, it's the disruption.
So that's great for me to know, because that's something that we can also very much address and dispel. Each of the additions that we're looking at accelerating are actually add-ons to the structure. So they're actually not going to have a disruptive effect. The projects that are already contemplated for 2025 will theoretically be the more disruptive because they're internal to the building. So those are already set, they're already happening. These capital projects that we're giving you the opportunity to potentially accelerate, each of those is an appendage attached to the existing building. And they can happen simultaneously to the construction that's contemplated without adding additional disruption in the building. Secondarily, and I'll ask Dave to really start talking about this, the reason we hired a full-time capital projects manager, and Dave in particular, is because he has 20 years of running capital projects in operating facilities. So law offices that have to stay open, hotels that have to stay open. And the reason that we selected a design team with professionals from all over the country, Milwaukee, Philadelphia, Texas, is because every single one of them is a senior living design team member. They only work in senior living exclusively. And so they are uniquely qualified to address exactly what you're concerned about. We have budgeted significantly for temporary walls. The contract with the builder only allows them to be on site doing work during waking hours. And we defined those. There will not be off hours work being done. All of these things are great. And I think what would be really great, and I'll talk to Dave about this, is I bet you there's others that are interested in this topic. We don't have a focus group on logistics. So maybe, they're focus groups. So he's got focus groups on, health and wellness, arts and so forth. But there are other residents, I'm sure, that are interested in the logistical piece of it. So I will pose to him that he put that together so that people that are like-minded with you can go to him in a formal setting, provide concerns, and then he can bring those back to the design team. So we'll plan on adding that. Go ahead, Evelyn.
I'm a little confused. You say this, you want to accelerate the construction, but for the 2028 budget, these are already in there.
Yeah.
What happens to that money if we raise all this money?
We don't borrow it. So dollar for dollar, anything that's raised for these projects is one less dollar that we have to borrow. So if we're able to raise 10 million, if we were going to borrow, let's say 80 million in the second round, we only have to borrow 70. So this is a dollar for dollar savings to Woodland Pond over time, and and then it's an interest savings because what we borrow has to have interest paid on it. That's an excellent question. Do we have another topic or do we?
We do.
I can give about 5 more minutes, but anyway, so just please keep in mind, the Finance Review Committee meetings are open. We talk about this extensively at every meeting. Poor Caroline has to do the minutes. It's a beast. And please make sure that you're talking with Dave, and I'll get him to put a logistics focus group together for this exact issue. Yeah, okay, so we'll get that going.
So there are 3 other topics that Michelle and I talked about. 2 of them can be deferred and I can speak to them when she's not in the room, but there was one thing that came up at a sustainability committee meeting last week or 2 weeks ago, where we were talking about saving money, and the biggest user of energy around here is the heat and air conditioning. And Michelle said that while there are guidelines for each room, each public room, and the process is if the temperature on the thermometer is between it, nothing's gonna be done. Nevertheless, residents are calling concierge and making a fuss about that. I would like, and I said this to Michelle yesterday, I'd like her to think that she has the support and her staff has the support of the council for saying to someone, when they call, is the temperature in the room between the plus and the high and the low? If the answer is yes, then that person is not obligated to do anything except say to the person, well, I'm not gonna do anything because it's in that room. At present, that's not what's being done. Our concierge staff, who I think is taking these calls, is reacting to intense pressure from certain residents that they want and demand to change. I'd like to say that we have a committee, our physical plan committee, who spent a fair amount of time and energy on this and came up with some pretty darn practical and reasonable guidelines. This is only our first go through, our first year of doing this. And I think it's a good system, but we have to let it work, and we have to let her know that residents support management's stopping other residents from making a fuss. That, if you want to speak to that, fine, but one of the things we talked about.
And I would just really want to echo and emphasize the fact that physical plant committee did work extensively on this. So that little underneath the clock, if you were to turn around, there's a little, and you see this in all the public rooms, or you should, there's a laminated sign that says classroom, heating times, cooling times, this is the range, and then there's a thermometer right next to the clock there too. Physical plant committee worked hard to come up with what should these ranges be. The physical plant committee is run by residents and it's attended by residents. So that was the resident voice in this. I think the system is fair. We do have a lot of residents that call and are very belligerent with concierge about it, and oftentimes they just back down. I would love to be able to tell concierge that if the resident says, yes, it's supposed to be between 68 and 70 in here and it's 69, that the concierge says, thank you, but it's where it's going to be. So what do you need from the council on that? I don't
They're
think.
hearing this for the first time, and I just want.
Is it the same in every place? Because the thing that I find, is the fitness room. It's a small place, and generally a fitness facility is a little cooler because when you work out, and it's very warm in there.
So that's actually something that Dave and I talked about yesterday, was I needed to go back because I didn't know the answer to that question, so it's on my homework list. I think that the fitness room should be set to a cooler range. for the same reason? I just don't know the answer. So I do think that certain rooms, it can be a standard, you know, if it's just a meeting room or game room or whatever, but I was thinking like that the fitness room should probably have a different range. I just don't know if it does. It's on my list to find out list. Okay, and if it doesn't, I think it goes back to physical plant, but I think physical plant is kind of the voice on this. But I will, they are meeting, I believe, every 2 weeks now instead of monthly. Oh, that stopped? Oh, okay, never mind, they're back to monthly. But I think it just goes back to physical plant. I think it's a perfectly appropriate question. And I had the same one yesterday. I didn't know the answer.
May I respond with the answer? The fitness room does have a lower temperature than most of the other rooms.
Oh, okay, Fred is indicating fitness room. All right, so maybe it needs to be, so Liz is saying it's a little bit hot still, Fred. So maybe if you guys could just take that under advisement. Do you know, is the pool also set differently?
Yes, the pool is also set differently. That's a higher temperature than the other rooms.
And the
I
other
don't
day,
remember what the temperatures are, but
we got a call the other day saying it's too hot in the pool room. So it's. Okay.
Okay. I got more if you got time.
Okay.
Um,
I have an 11:30.
okay, so employee of the quarter. You talked about maybe changing the process, and I think that we've had some real open ears on that if you.
Yeah. So, this requires a little bit of background, as does so many things at Woodland Pond. But, we had a pretty strong employee of the quarter program, I would say for like 5 years or so, before COVID happened. A lot of things that we had in place before COVID went by the wayside because we had to focus our efforts on other things. And some of you will remember that for a period of time early on in COVID, we were doing something called Woodland Pond Wonders. And it was highlighting a staff member each day of somebody that did something, you know, extra for COVID, and we would do a profile of them, or maybe it was every week, I don't remember, but we moved from the employee of the quarter to Woodland Pond Wonders program because so many people were doing so much during COVID to keep the community going. And after that wasn't really a thing anymore because we started to come out of the COVID crisis. We didn't immediately put the employee of the quarter program back. And it wasn't intentional, it was just we had a lot going on, it didn't come back. A lot of you know that 3 years ago in December, just past December, we decided that as part of our strategic plan, which is to be an employer of choice, one of our aspects is to be an employer of choice. We decided that we needed to really start putting our money where our mouths were on that and figuring out how do we evaluate that. Because we have very high resident employee satisfaction, very low turnover, and that's usually an indicator of being an employer of choice, but we really wanted to dig in on this a little bit more. So we contracted with a company, a national company called Great Place to Work. That's a trademark, all of those letters are capitalized. And what they do is they have a standard employee survey that is issued to all of their clients. There are a base set of 65 questions that every employee, every sector gets, all of their customers, and then you can customize up to 3 questions in your survey. So the first year we did it, we achieved Great Place to Work status. You have to get a certain number of employees have to respond to the survey, and over 65% of those people have to say, I would consider Woodland Pond a great place to work, among other things in the survey. We did it again in 2023 and achieved it, and we did it again in 2024 and we achieved it. However, as I told you yesterday, I was once told by a mentor that if you're going to do a survey, you need to be able to be prepared to respond to it. You don't do a survey if you're not going to respond to the issues that are in there. So within those 65 questions, one of the reasons that this is so valuable to us is because not only do we get Woodland Pond's results for each of those 65 on a scale of 1 out of 100, but we also get our data from 2023 and 2022. So we can compare ourselves on each question trending, and we get comparative data to whatever industry data we want. So we could do all of their clients, we could do just senior living, so forth. One of the areas that we were underperforming where I wanted us to be, because despite the fact that we were beating the industry, and I read the numbers to you yesterday, I expect us to be 80% or higher on a scale of 1 to 100 on everything. That's always my goal. Where we were not meeting that, the industry average on the question of there are opportunities for individual recognition. The industry average for the years running was 66 out of 100. So that's the whole industry. Woodland Pond was at like 70 for 2023, which I wasn't satisfied with. So we were beating the 67 that the industry was at, but we were only at a 70, and my goal was 80%. So when we got that result in 2023, the natural way for us to start to do that again was to reinvigorate the employee of the quarter, or so we thought. Because that is an opportunity for individual recognition. We had it in place before, we knew how to do it. We thought, okay, let's put this back in, let's try to have this accomplish that goal of people, staff looking for individual recognition. So that's what we did. So we put it back in place for a year. What was different when we brought it back this time was, whereas previously it had just been an executive team vote and nomination, we actually, with discussion with the then Residents Council, concluded that we were going to give the Residents Council one vote, one nomination, and then one vote among the nominees. So to give the residents a voice. What we have found, and I think we came to the same conclusion at the same time, because Bridget and I have been talking about this quite a bit, is that it favors the employees that are seen regularly.
Yeah.
And it actually has the opposite effect on employee morale of what you're intending to do. Because there are very hardworking staff, like extraordinarily hardworking staff that none of you know because you don't see them. And I used our dishwashers as an example. They're probably the hardest working people in the building, in probably the yuckiest conditions. And they stand there, 8 hours a day, 2 shifts, washing dishes from, 300 residents, meals all being, 3 meals a day coming back from the health center. It's a yucky job. And they don't complain, they show up to work. These are hardworking people that have a hard job on their feet, and they would never make it to the employee of the quarter because you just don't know them. And similarly, a weakness of our system is, although I have a bird's eye view of all of the departments and all of the staff, it was very hard for our executive team in a lot of cases to know who to vote for once the nominations were made. Because somebody in independent living may feel very strongly about an IL staff member, but Philip and the folks that are voting from the health center may have no idea who they are. So if we would get, let's say, 10 nominees between the executive team and the Residents Council, if we would get 10 nominees, the winner would only be getting 2 or 3 votes. Because a lot of people just don't know them. So it's not a good system.
In addition, it's not one that everybody endorses. Some people don't like this kind of a contest to begin with. Once you get through that door, these are the problems. We just don't know some of these people. Even if you know a housekeeper, you don't know other people's housekeeper. You have a waitress, or they turn over so quick, maybe they haven't earned the regard that you want. It's tough to pick a name. It's tough to pick a name.
Yeah, and I mean, if you go into like a Walmart or like a lot of places, a lot of businesses in the 1980s, 1990s, not so much in the 2000s, and certainly not so much now. You'd walk into a place and you'd see a picture in a frame and it would say employee of the quarter, and it was common. That's kind of gone by the wayside. And I think it's time for us to reevaluate how to marry our desire to be responding to the staff that are asking for more individualized recognition, but to scrap or at least table the employee of the quarter program. What I'd like to do is we as a management team are considering our options. I take any feedback from any of you, not today, but if you want to think about it as individuals, something that you've seen successful in your careers, a way that you felt or given individual recognition to staff, alternative ways to this, I welcome any suggestion. But again, our goal is to, on the items on that Great Place to Work survey where we were underperforming from my goal of 80%, we're trying to chip away at that. And the one that stands out to me the most is there are not opportunities for individual recognition. So hopefully that gives some background onto how this all went, where it is, and where we'd like to go.
So you're halting the program?
We're halting the program.
Okay, so, just to bring you all up to date, we did have a nominee for the fourth quarter. It was submitted yesterday to Bridget, and where it goes from there is wherever it goes from there. So we're closing it down. I have it as a talking point, and I didn't know until yesterday at 10 o'clock that this is where Michelle was on this. I wanted to talk about whether or not she wanted the council to be involved in 2025, what I thought the council's temperature was on the topic, and then to bring it up and talk about it. So this, we don't have to talk about that later. We've talked about it already. Anything from the table? Okay. One other thing, I apparently misread part of Michelle's memo, where the topic was to be completely above board or something like that, talking about the forthcoming departures of Gretchen and Mary Jo. I read it like there was a party in the works. She used the phrase, I think something like preparing for their departure. To me, that meant party. That's not what it meant. That was succession planning. Let's get ready for the next one, because I come out of government and we couldn't hire somebody to take somebody else's place. You only have one job line, somebody's in it, you can't put another person in it. So we get vacancies and then somebody would come in and have to be trained by who the hell knows who. So I misread that there's gonna be a party, there'll probably be something, but it won't be a big party. But maybe Michelle had an idea. There may.
I don't wanna say that there's not gonna be a party, but you wanna explain, should I just give the 1 minute on
Yeah,
where
you'll do it better than me,
Okay,
for sure.
so Woodland Pond is a unique place. We know that. As an employer and as a manager, we're always, for those of you that have been in management, whether it's governmental or any other kind, you know that you're always dealing with competing priorities, right? And here it's like that every single day. So while there are certain employees that get a lot of airtime with residents and become very close with residents, and Mary Jo and Gretchen are two of those, we have 300 employees. And so while it will be the natural inclination of residents to say, these people are super special to us, we want to do everything to make them go out with a bang, not yada yada, we don't do that for anybody else, right? So we have nurses that retire from here after being here for 10 years every year. Residents aren't saying we want to give them a big party. I use the example with Dave, and this is something that actually happened. I don't think anybody here was here at the time. Alice will remember this. Alice probably doesn't know the fallout though. Do you remember when Sarah had the baby shower? Were you here at that time? So when Sarah Leonard was pregnant with her son Joseph, who has passed away since, Sarah was beloved at that time. And the residents insisted on having a baby shower for her. And that was despite Human Resources saying, no, not a good idea, because we have people that get pregnant here all the time. And if we're setting a precedent that we're gonna do it for Sarah because she's highly visible and well-loved, the person that's pregnant, that might be a housekeeper, who is also around all of you all the time, that doesn't get a baby shower thrown, that's a very bad optic. It's very, very challenging from an employee morale perspective. So what we need to do is we need to come up with a way to balance the desires of the residents to be able to formally celebrate and thank those that you had a lot of access to, but that also doesn't diminish and unintentionally diminish those that you may not see. Again, that might be very hardworking people that but just may not have access to the residents. So I talked with, nothing has been decided yet. Again, I don't want you going out of here thinking that we've decided what we're doing. The only thing that has been decided is that they both right now intend to retire in 2025. The only other thing that has been decided is that we are going to post for their positions while they are still here, so that they may both be involved in not only helping us choose their successor, but to train. That is all that's been decided so far. In terms of how we say farewell, that has not been decided. What we are considering and this was just late breaking as of yesterday, so again, not decided yet. But what we are considering is that now, as we know, more and more of our long timers will be retiring this year, next year. You know, we've got a lot of people that are starting to be here for 15 years, they're in their 60s, you know. That similar to how we do a celebration in September for people reaching their living here milestones, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, that we do an annual retirement celebration for all of the employees that are retiring in a given year, and do it that way.
Very good.
So we talked about that yesterday.
Very fertile meeting,
It was.
That's just about it.
Yeah, so I like that idea. I think that it gives everyone the opportunity to be invited and be recognized if they're planning to retire and they've notified us as such. And, you know, you can think about that and let it marinate a little bit, but I think that that's a good way for us to balance it. And then if you in particular feel like you wanna go extra congratulatory for one of the people that's there because you know them well or you like them better, you can do that at that party, but everyone would equally be invited, everyone would equally get the send off. And then how you engage with them or celebrate them is your own personal choice.
A lot of heads.
I seem like, it seems like affirmative.
Can read their own.
An affirmative way to handle it. So more to come on that, but I think that that would be a sound and fair way to handle it.
Thank you.
Q&A. Bring up a Q&A eventually.
I need to just, I've only spoken to Dave about it and all of you, but I haven't spoken to any of my exec team about it yet. I wanna make sure they're all on board with it. In particular, I wanna talk to Sarah because I wanna make sure that she feels like that will align with whatever Mary Jo and Gretchen might be expecting. Both of them are very humble. But if you've had any discussions with either of them to date, they're both also handling this very differently. Like Mary Jo is very excited. She's very pleased to let Woodland Pond. She's got a lot of things that she wants to start doing with her family and other things. And she's really excited and happy about this. And she's been in my office and everyone's been so kind. It's exciting and I think it's great. Gretchen's more reserved, you know, like she's a reserved person in general. And in my letter, if you saw it, you know, certainly they welcome and understand the discussions of the residents, but there are different levels of humble, different levels of outgoing. So we just have to be sensitive to that too.
Agreed.
Okay. I have an 11:30 Zoom
So
call.
thank you for the hour. I only anticipated a half hour and I hope the audience appreciated it as well.
All right, thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
So let's resume. Let's resume June's committee report. And what I'd like to say before that is, for the council members, let's not worry about the new business topic. For today, we can kick that down the road. After the committee reports, we'll do Tom's review of what the Residents Association presentation might be, and then we'll adjourn after that. So June.
Unfortunately, I was unable to attend the meeting, but so I have some feedback from other people. They met on Wednesday, January the 22nd. This is sustainability, yeah. And there was a general discussion about what we are doing, what the different task forces are doing, and how effective are our efforts. And there is some move to try and investigate further what actually happens to the recycling that comes in that big bin and gets taken away by the company. We're not at all sure what happens to it. On Tuesday, as part of the alternate month speaker series, Deb Welsh will be speaking on the topic of Beyond Plastic. She's been very active with that organization, and she will give us a talk about plastics use and misuse and what we might do about it. On Saturday, February the 15th from 11 to 3, the Repair Cafe will be in session in the PAC. And there will be notices of preparatory meetings. If you're interested, Jakob is the contact person. He's always looking for people to help out, do the repairs, and for people to help with the setting up and the running of the affair. The next meeting of the Sustainability Committee meeting is February 26th in the classroom. And Earth Week, just to remind you, Earth Week is coming up in April 21st to 25th. And Sue Gilder is planning that, and then there will be notices about meetings. That's it. Any questions?
Just one advertisement relative to Repair Cafe. Anything you want to know, you'll be able to learn if you don't already know it, starting at 2 o'clock this afternoon in the pack when Yakov will be the interviewee.
It will be between 2 and 7 in the evening.
So I hope you can all.
Okay, yes, just to follow along with that, there will be a meeting tomorrow, I think at 2 o'clock on Earth Week. So if you,
All right, yeah.
yes, so I need to pitch that or I'll be sleeping on the couch. Okay, financial review.
It's 1 o'clock.
Fine. It's tomorrow.
It's tomorrow.
Just my report on the Financial Review Committee meeting, we had on Monday. The metrics that are coming in for our year-end, flash report, the days cash on hand that we talk about an awful lot is, came in very positive to budget at 181 days. And, this is way above the covenant, which is set for 125. And in the discussion about the financing and everything, this is a metric that the bondholders and the board look at very carefully as to how well we're doing with our management of our assets. The other critical ratio that is reported in any year is the debt service coverage ratio, which means how well can we cover our debt. The ratio has been set as the minimum of 1.2. We came in at 1.97, so we're doing quite well. At this particular meeting, and I encourage everyone who has got any questions or any concerns or wants to have a very useful hour spent, come to the financial meetings in the art studio. But we were shared the Greystone report, which is an update of the project that is also shared with the board. So you get the information right away. So if you've got questions, concerns, do come and participate in our meetings. And the other part of my report was that the Woodland Pond is looking to explore funding options for the renovation. That was thoroughly discussed now. So is there any questions for financial review?
What day of the week is it? What would you?
It's the first Monday of the month and it's at 1 o'clock and a very good meeting. I also noticed, Dave, you had me on here for interfaith.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, I did attend the interfaith committee meeting. I was very pleased. It's a very well-run, very vibrant organization. There's lots being discussed. After some discussion, they concluded that there's no need for a council liaison for that group. They're not bashful. They'll come here and chew our ear if they need to. So.
Thank you. That question or comments on that? Okay, no. I had asked Tom to go. I had kind of pushed this last time, and Tom came back with an interesting thought, which I had put under new business, which I don't think we have time for this morning, but we'll kick it up to next week. Is we have liaisons to any number of committees. Some are council committees, and I think liaison is required, but some of the other committees, maybe we don't need a liaison. Let's see how the liaison thinks. Let's see how the council thinks. Let's see how the other committee thinks, and maybe we can retract some of those and save some work or time. A discussion for the future. I have some stuff from Kathy Kelly. She couldn't be with us this morning. The benefit fund did not meet, but she has something on the library, which I'll give to you, Molly. Spirituality books and the meditation room in the health center. There's gonna be an open house on Friday the 14th. Doesn't say the time, but it sounds like it's gonna be at a time when people eat, so it's probably any time.
1 to 3.
Okay, 1 to 3, and this is not a bake sale, it was written on the monthly calendar, it's just free food.
Yeah.
Okay, and Dave Roberts will also be speaking, so that's Catherine.
At 2 o'clock.
Dave will, okay, Evan said, Dave will speak it too, thank you. I can't take questions because that's all the information I have, but it sounds like next Friday is going to be some food, so show up. Council topics review.
Oh, yes, just to update the council, I'm collecting the data for the slides that are at the beginning. I know, Evelyn, you had some questions about some of them. I'm tweaking them to make them more, let's say, visibly informative and not ask a lot of questions. I do ask, if you haven't already taken the Survey Monkey on communications, the portion of this particular talk is about communications. I have been researching it because there's so many different ways. I have identified 27 ways to be able to communicate in this community. There's obviously mail, there's postcards and all kinds of stuff, but there are 27. I think I'm going to uncover 2 more after my meeting with management. But what I'm looking for, Carl, is I'm looking for, get the response in on the ways you would like to be able to communicate. What do you prefer? And do that. So far, from Lindsay, we've got over 110 responses, but it'll be helpful to bring some more meaning to the presentation. So that's what I've got, and I hopefully next week or so, be able to update it and get you a new draft.
We have another council meeting before the presentation.
Oh, yes, yeah. Well, I'm hoping to get it done before that.
I have an issue, can you hear me? Yeah. That I'd like to raise with the council about these surveys, not necessarily this one, but
Let's hold it. Anybody got anything on this? This survey right now, so we can close it off and start something else. I don't want to have it.
No, it has, it's.
I thought you said it didn't, but go ahead.
The question of surveys. I have a feeling that we've gotten very many surveys over the last year. Some better than others, some which, to my limited understanding, the questions seem to be so ambiguous that I wasn't able to answer them. I would like a general policy of the council looking at some of these surveys before they go out. I don't know if anybody feels that way about surveys they've gotten there. Maybe I'm the only one.
No. Also, may I
Not
add
yet.
something?
No, not yet. In a minute, we'll get to second years. Anything on Carl's comment? Okay, I need to circle back to something that I spoke to Larry about. Somehow last year, when I was the liaison to the board, I never submitted my reports to the council, nor did they get attached to the minutes. So I'd like to fix that by giving to the secretary and asking that they be affixed to the minutes going back a year. And I can actually do that myself, Mom, if you want me to. Larry submitted his for this year, for this last month. And I know that Tamar did before me, so I don't know how I missed it last year. Feel bad about it. There's nothing top secret in it, but I think it ought to be part of the full package of the minutes. Okay, I'd like to skip the new business things that are on here and just again say we're gonna have Repair Cafe the next 2 times people are set up and then close the actual council session and reopen the ears, if that's okay with it. Now, you had something there, Liz?
Yeah, just regarding the survey.
Oh,
Oh, sorry.
Regarding the surveys, I was wondering if it might do any good to add something at the end, like your own comments, so that you could say something that isn't in this specific question on the survey, because I find the same as Carl, I'm like, I don't know how to answer this, because it's like, you know, something a little different in my situation, so I just thought at the end, do you have additional comments about anything in the survey? Would that be considered? Sure.
Diane?
Yeah.
A couple of the surveys that came from the administration, had like 3 or 4 questions. They were not surveys, they weren't questionnaires, I don't know what you call it, when you ask 4 big questions and the answer is yes or no. This last one that was just discussed, I thought was very thorough. I would have just liked another choice, all of the above or none of the above, because there were several, they said, which medium do you want to get prefer to get your information? And I feel strongly that I like it when it's by email and by, you know, in the Chanticleer, and I would say, and the phone, whatever. The multiple, that wasn't a choice, to choose multiple.
Wait, would you look that up, Michael, please? Thank you.
I have a question, related to acceleration of the, work being done. I think it would help people to be more open to the acceleration if they knew precisely which of the projects were going to be mentioned, like is the PAC gonna be built sooner? Is the, dining room renovation going to happen early on? Maybe that's already in the plan, but that would settle my mind. The other thing, what form would resident contribution to acceleration take place? Would it be an outright contribution toward the effort? Can you cast any light on those questions?
Nothing's been decided yet. You heard Michelle say nothing's been
Yes.
decided yet.
Yes.
What has been talked about relative to your first part of the question, dining room is part of, dining room, Michelle says, dining drives everything around here.
Okay.
The dining is gonna be done. What would be potentially accelerated are what would be the add-ons to the building. The new PAC is certainly one of them. The new wellness center, well, fitness center, excuse me, is another one. If somebody can remind me of other things that were mentioned. Art studio, thank you very much. Dining is definitely part of it
Yes.
first. These are things that, the things that were scheduled for 2020, I don't have them in front of me. Some of them, to the extent that funding might be raised and prioritized, that's what will be done, but nothing has been decided. She did say, when I asked, and when others in the room asked, what's your feeling for what the residents most want? And she's saying she's hearing new PAC. That is also, as I recall from the meeting, and others were here, and please correct me, the single biggest ticket item among those different other things. I think there was something to the neighborhood of $10 to $12 million total, and this was somewhere in the 5 to 6 range. My numbers could be wrong, but the proportion is probably about right. What would residents be asked to? It hasn't been decided yet. It, as she said to Carl, it's not borrowing, it's giving.
Okay.
That's all I know. And I don't want to go further, and Margaret's got her hand up behind you.
Find these.
Yeah, Margaret.
Behind you, Alice.
Well, kind of, yeah.
I just have 2 points. One, most of our communication and now the menus are gonna come by constant contact. People are not getting it because it requires a different, I don't want to belabor this point, but it requires a different set of data for the people that are, for the names that they're getting. It doesn't come from your computer, it comes from their computer. Because I've had dealings with Constant Contact before. We need to be sure that everybody is getting it. I was at dinner with somebody the other day, they've asked for it to be corrected and it still hasn't been corrected. That's number one thing, is that if you want communication and everything's gonna be done by Constant Contact, that database for Constant Contact has to be right on.
What's not happening to your friends? They're not getting it?
They're not getting it, anything from Constant Contact.
I'm not.
Why not?
I don't get it either.
Hey, more than I knew.
Take a survey.
There's not one. Moving on.
Yes, the other thing is that I'm on the finance committee, and I sort of look at myself as a non-financial person that's on the finance committee. So I just wanted to say one thing that I thought would answer Carl's question, which Michelle said at a finance committee, and I do encourage you to come because they're really interesting. Their debt capacity to be able to borrow this money, it's just like when you went in to buy your first home. They looked at your salary, they looked at your wife's salary, they looked at what your potential income was, and they told you how much money you could borrow. So that's what this is what we can borrow right now for this 2025. When it comes to the 2028 financing, that's gonna depend on the expansion. Because with the expansion, we'll have a greater debt capacity. We'll have more people, we'll have people buying in, and so on. So that's why if we do this campaign, this capitals campaign, we will get the money quicker because we won't be borrowing that money. So we will be able to do these things that everybody's interested in. So that's just a simplistic way of looking at it.
I agree with what you said, Margaret, about the committee being an interesting committee. I sat in for the first time the other day and I was very, very impressed. And you're passing it around, Jill has something in front of you.
I'll make it brief. This is addressing Mel's concerns about the disruption. I don't know how this one will go, and maybe it won't go like the one that I'm familiar with, but I was on the board of a health center expansion at a CCRC in Western New York. This was a health center. This is people in hospital beds and things like that. They did an expansion of about a third of the space. They increased the number of beds by about a third, and they totally rearranged the formation. They put the nurses station somewhere else, they put the offices somewhere else. I mean, it was a major renovation of a health center. Our board met every month, and every month before our board meeting, we were taken on a tour. It took them about 8-9 months, I think. And we took them every month before the meeting. We were walked through the construction site. They had put hard hats on. We walked through the construction site. They showed us everything that had happened since the last time we came through. The part that I was most impressed with was there was no dust. They had big, huge, thick plastic walls around all the construction areas. So the places where we walked, where there were still people in beds and still people in wheelchairs, there was no dust there. There was a minimal amount of noise. They had some kind of noise abatement. I don't know how they did it, but there were actually people working in there with drills and hammers and power hammers, and they were not loud. And during the same time, we got almost no complaints from residents themselves or their family members about the sound, the disruption, the dirt, or anything. I mean, we got, just like your board does, we got communications every month from residents and from their family members. And while that was going on, most of the mail that we got regarding that was they couldn't believe how good it was, how well it was going, how fast it was going, and how disruptive it was not. So, and this is the same, the people who did that were the same kind of people that they've hired here. They were people who have done this in places like hotels, hospitals, other places. And so they had experience on how to minimize the disruption. And I think we just have to wait and see, but maybe trust that these people have the same skill.
Okay, going once? Going twice.
Wait a minute.
I don't want to stand in the way of anybody's lunch, mine included, but anyway, I just don't quite understand your question, Alice. Ultimately, it all comes down to cash. Now, what form that cash might take, I don't really have an idea. It's gonna be a check. It could be in the form of appreciated stock that you own, that you want to turn over. I did that once already a couple of years ago for the benefit fund. That doesn't mean making out a check, just means getting rid of some stock that may or may not be living up to your expectations.
Okay, anything else?
You mentioned the nominating process. Where are you on the idea of extending terms?
We haven't met on that. It's just a proposal that Tom has suggested that we consider when we bring the package to the residents. So nothing outside what you've heard in this room has been talked about that I know of.
I feel very strongly, and I think others would agree, that the 2-year term should be two 2-year terms are the picture.
You would recommend no change in what we have?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, I think you said that the other
I
thing too.
did, but
Okay.
I wanted to. That's why
Okay.
I'm wondering
Well,
why
I
you
was
decided.
paying attention. No decisions have been made. This was a suggestion, a topic area that Tom, as I asked him to come up with, and we haven't been anywhere outside this room with that yet. Can I get a motion to punch out? Okay, unanimous. Thank you all very much, and thank you for your patience during a long meeting, but I know that Michelle spent a fair amount of time with us today and talked about everything I gave her to talk about. So thank you very much.
Yeah. Bottom of your finger.
Yeah.
I don't wanna creep your stuff, but we don't need it.
I'm very good at certainly I jokingly, in the casual conversation, I jokingly said. For National Memorial Day.
I'm thinking it's. She does watch And I want to meet you in the okay?
Yes.
Marie, it's Marie.
Yes, I wonder too.
No, the committee meeting, in the binder. They had their own binder. Council has its binder, and then there's another binder for all the committees. Every once in a while, well, you need to hear what somebody say, if he's got his name. In my report, but in writing, you could. This I wanted for, it's Larry, council, Larry's board report, yes.
I don't know how I can emphasize that.
Well, you can by, the discussion.
That's great. Nobody goes on for pages and pages.
Position and.
Well, you're saying that she could, as we make our reports, she could jot down what she thinks is important and leave out.
Other people are doing it, they seem think that it's more efficient.
That's better.
It may be more.
So it's like this.
Since it gives you
An
opportunity to serve on the council.
He was going to.
He's right. True.
Waiting his turn.
What else do you need?
Well, no, finish with these guys, then you and I'll talk. You're more important than that.
I'll email it to you.
I got that.
I sent you a question about bonds. Why do they keep only talking about 28? What about 2026? Can't they get some more bonds in 26? We already used up our capacity
I think
in
that's pretty
25.
I think
Next time I wasn't busy. We have.
Yeah,
but.
that's why.
Why could they not?
All the time he said, "Fuck, we're-"
I mean, that's what kind of stupid, they're stupid about it.
Yeah.
It seems to me they were talking about 28. There are 3 years.
Right.